Why, hello there, and thank you so much as always for joining me on this beautiful Wednesday or any day of the week that you happen to be tuning in. I hope you're having a great start to your engagement. If you've been engaged for a while, I hope you're enjoying wedding planning. And congratulations, of course, on such a special time in your lives. I am very, very excited for you. And I'm always extremely honored that you invite me to come into this really special moment in your lives. So with that, today we're going to break down the process for creating your wedding guest list. And I have a lot of your guest list questions that I'm going to share along the way throughout the conversation today. We are going to cover everything from getting started with who to invite, who gets a +1 on their invitation, should you invite children, navigating parental input on wanting to have people make that list, using an A list and a B list setup, and so much more. So let's get right into it. Making your wedding guest list, especially at the very beginning, can feel like a big, overwhelming task. So what we're going to do to start is I'm going to break it down into some steps, and then we're going to kind of go deeper. Now, at the very beginning, the first few run-throughs of trying to create your wedding guest list can feel pretty overwhelming. There are a lot of moving parts here. It definitely sounds easier in theory than it actually is in practice. So if this is something that you're getting into and you're feeling kind of frustrated by it, that's very normal. And those feelings are really warranted because, like I said, there's a lot that goes into play as you're creating that list of people who you want to share this really, really special day with. We all have very unique families, relationships with our friends, relationships with our family and our friends, and things can get muddled. So if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed by this task, you're definitely not alone. And to start, I'm going to break it down into 7 really careful steps just to get the process started. So the first step is to set your wedding budget and to know your venue capacity. Those two things are intertwined, right? They go hand in hand. And if you've been tuning in over the past couple of weeks, you know that we've had some deep dive conversations into your budget and your venue. It is not by accident that I'm putting these 3 shows together because your budget, your venue, and your guest list are all very closely tied to one another. And it's really hard to complete one step without having the other 2 in mind. So I have intentionally designed the flow of the past couple weeks to kind of follow this flow, your budget, your venue, and then your guest list. So you're going to decide how many people you can realistically accommodate based on both your budget and your venue size. Okay, can't do one without the other. So your budget and your venue are set. Number 2, you're going to create a must invite list. All right. So start with your immediate family, your very closest friends, and the most important guests in the 2 of your lives who you absolutely must invite to your wedding. Okay. So that's your first list, must have. Next, you and your partner are going to divide and prioritize between the 2 of you. Okay. So each of you should make your own list. Each of you should have your own must-have list. And if you start writing down names, it's okay to start in a brainstorm phase. That's fine. We're going to go through and we're going to redo this list multiple times. So to get yourself started, just start writing down names. If the 2 of you break off, and if you're brainstorming and each of your lists are quickly outgrowing your venue and or your budgeted funds, then here's what we're going to do next. We're going to combine your list with your partner, and then we're going to further segment your list into a couple of different tiers. So tier 1 is those must-have people. Those are your closest family, your best friends. Okay. Tier 2, these are your, we would love to invite them. So your extended family, maybe really close colleagues, close friends who you've really kept in decent touch with over the years. And then you're going to make a tier 3. Okay, so these are the guests who it would be nice to invite if you had unlimited space and unlimited budget. It would be nice to have these people here, but they're going in your tier 3. And I'll stop and pause really quickly here because I cringe inside thinking about ranking our relationships with people. And I don't mean this in a very super personal way. I simply mean it in a lens of, again, if we had an unlimited budget and our venue could hold 1 million people, you would invite everyone in your life who falls into any of these categories. However, in reality, my guess is that your budget is somewhat limited and your venue space is also likely somewhat limited. So we have to kind of employ these little tools so that we can filter out and really make sure that the people who are the closest to us, who are most important in our lives right now, so that we make sure they get an invite. And then these other folks, hopefully we can create space and room for them. All right, so you and your partner have made your lists, you've combined your lists, maybe you're employing a tier system. The next step is you will want to factor in input from your families. Everybody's family situation is unique. Everyone's relationship to their mom and or dad is very unique. I completely respect that. Some general guidelines here. If your parents or family are contributing financially to your wedding, they may very well want to have a say in who makes the guest list. If they are not contributing, then maybe more of that decision power rests with you. We're going to talk about that in detail later in today's show. But for right now, while we're just kind of doing surface level, you will want to factor in your family input in terms of who your mom and dad, your grandma, grandpa, mom and mom, dad and dad, maybe your family's divorced, however your beautiful, unique family setup is, go ahead and check in, do a little check. Do we need to get input from our families? Next bullet point here as we're getting started, make a decision. Where do you stand on plus ones? So that's a single guest who would be given the opportunity to bring a guest. And then where do you stand on children? Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about both of these in much more detail as we continue through our conversation. But this is a big area for potential savings, if you will. If you are looking to keep things tight and you're looking to keep a small, intimate guest list, then not allowing plus ones and keeping it to adults only are two really, really effective levers to pull in order to make that happen. And I will say here, again, we're still on the surface level. We'll go into it deeper. Whatever you decide on plus ones and kids, do yourselves a favor and make that consistent throughout. Okay? You're not inviting one family to bring their kids, but the other family is told it's adults only. That rarely ever goes over well. So be consistent on your plus ones and your kids. And our next step, trim if necessary. If your guest list is too long, if it's outgrowing your venue space and or your budget, then you're going to start by making cuts from the bottom tiers and go back and forth. Be fair, be even on both sides. Okay, so you're not cutting all the bottom 20 of your list, but your partner doesn't get any cut. You guys can work that out. Again, you know your family, your friends, your relationships much better than I do. I'm just here to offer some guidelines to make this process as smooth as possible. And our last point here, as we're getting started, our last tip, be careful about making assumptions on how many people will actually RSVP yes. This is a really common question, and it's a super common thing that couples punch into Google. How many of our wedding guests will actually RSVP yes? In other words, do we have the freedom to invite 200 people, even though we know our venue and our budget can only accommodate 150? And my short answer is no, that is not how it works. If you have a firm set upper limit cap of 100 people who are allowed in your venue space, and I mean like it's fire marshal regulated that you cannot have more than 100 people in that space, it is not best practice to go out and send 140 invites because you know that not everyone will come. That's true. Most likely not everyone will come, but this is a really, really dangerous game of chicken to play. And sometimes, believe it or not, almost everyone does come. Okay, so that's a big, awkward, horrible. I mean, what's more uncomfortable than rating your guests into a tier system and cutting from the bottom tier? I'll tell you what's worse than that. It's actually sending out invitations and then having to go back and tell people, whoopsie, we miscalculated. Actually, you're not invited to our wedding. Okay, so don't let that happen to you. If you can't get within your range after your brainstorm with your partner, after you've made cuts to the bottom tier, then I do have another solution that we can employ. So with that perfect segue, let's talk about splitting your invitation list into an A list and a B list. One more quick moment for a cringe, because I know I get uncomfortable talking about our relationships this way. But this is a really kind of try to remove yourself from the emotions of it and go with the process. So running an A list and a B list is a great way to manage your guest count efficiently without playing that nasty game of chicken that we talked about before, where you're guessing how many people will actually RSVP yes. This can be really, really helpful and lots of couples take advantage of it. However, one caveat and a word of caution, this is a tricky business, okay? And there is lots of potential here for making a mistake or a miscalculation and having lots of hurt feelings. So let's kind of shift gears and really focus in on this idea of an A list and a B list. Okay, so step one, you're going to create the list. This is very similar to what we talked about earlier with your tiers. We talked about a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3. Same idea. You're basically splitting it into 2 though. So your A list, your must-have guests. These are your family, your best friends, your very, very closest people in your lives. So these people get invitations first. Again, this is most likely the top 2 tiers that we talked about earlier. Your B list. This is people who you would love to have if you have the space. Okay, so maybe this is your work friends, very distant relatives, plus ones who you don't really know at all or very well at all, etc., etc. So you have an A list and a B list. Step 2, you are going to send out wedding invitations to your entire A list. I don't know if that's 100 people. I don't know if that's 50 people. Whatever it is for your situation, you are inviting all of your A-list first. And obviously, I hope this goes without saying. Again, we're not playing that game of chicken where you have room for 100 people, so you invite 120 A-listers. That's not really how it works. All right, so use logic and reason and common sense here. Send out your A-list invitations and send them early. Okay, the name of this game is we're trying to buy ourselves time so that we can go ahead with a B list. All right, but in order to buy that time, you need to send those A-list invitations early. I suggest sending them about 4 months in advance of your wedding date. Yes, that is much longer than any search engine answer is going to give you, any wedding website is going to give you. That's my humble opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Take it or leave it. I recommend 4 months in advance. I always flip it around. If I'm on someone else's A-list and they're on my A-list, assuming it's reciprocal, I'm going to know 4 months in advance if I can attend your wedding or not. I don't think it's a big ask. I don't think it's unreasonable 4 months in advance. All right, so in conjunction with that early send, you're also going to set an earlier RSVP deadline. And this is so that you have time to gauge how many spots you have remaining. So if you send those invites early to your A list, if you send them 4 months ahead, but you don't set your RSVP date earlier, you're still going to be sitting here waiting for 3 months wondering who's going to come because none of them are going to RSVP until the very last second, which is what you're putting on your RSVP date. So set it early. Again, early is relative to you and your situation and how close you want to cut this at the end. But I would suggest setting your RSVP deadline for that A list at 2 months or 3 months before your wedding. When you're newly engaged and wondering where to even start, one of the easiest first steps is your wedding website. With Minted, you can build a free wedding website designed by independent artists, so it looks elevated without the custom design price tag. Everything lives in one place: your story, wedding details, RSVPs, and registry links. It's simple, clean, and stress-free. Head to weddingplanningpodcast.co/minted to get started today and unlock exclusive listener perks on save the dates, invitations, and more. So now what we're going to do is you are going to sit back at 3 months before your wedding or 2 months before your wedding, whichever you chose, and you are going to start creating a tally of who on your A list has RSVP'd no. And as those no's come in, which this is our A list, we want all these people to be there. But unfortunately, most likely not all of them will be able to come. So as you get a no, you can quietly send out an invitation to the next person on your B list. All right. If you get a family of 6 RSVP no, you can invite 6 people off your B list. Okay, so it's a very seamless back and forth, just like a swing, back and forth. And as you send out your B list, adjust the RSVP date. Okay, so your B list is getting an invitation a little bit later than your A list, and their RSVP date is going to be a little bit later than your A list. Now, here we go, big FAQ. What if we printed the RSVP deadline on our RSVP cards or on our invitation? If it's already printed and you're using an A list, B list, here's how we can kind of handle that smoothly. Option number 1, if you are doing online RSVPs through your wedding website, which, side note, I highly recommend. It will make your life so much easier. If you have not already ordered invitations, please consider using online RSVPs. This way, if you're using a wedding website or a digital program to collect your RSVPs, all you need to do is log into that program and set a different deadline for that B list. If you are having RSVP cards printed and that's just what you want to do, that's totally fine. You can always insert a small card in with your B-list invitations and just handwrite a later RSVP deadline. So for example, kindly RSVP by April 15th, 2025. You don't need to have anything reprinted. It's fine to just nicely mark a line through the last date and enclose a little handwritten note. And then another option here, again, if you haven't already ordered printed invitations, you could just consider going straight digital for your B list. So if your A list guests received formal printed invitations, that's great, that's fine. You could go ahead and just send your B list invites via email or electronically. And that way, again, you can edit this RSVP date by individual send. So you're not bound to a printed physical invitation that you can't change. And then a side note here, this is also a great perk because if you're worried about timing, digital invitations can speed up the B-list process because you're not waiting on mailing time. So you can go ahead and click send. It goes that day. They can come back that day, and you can know boom, 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 same day, instead of waiting 3 to 5 business days for your invitation to get delivered via mail. And then another week for them to put it back in the mail back to you, and then another 3 to 5 days for it to come back to you. Okay, so digital invites for your B list, great idea. And as we round out the A list, B list concept, I just want to leave you with some words of advice. We want to be subtle here, okay? We want to make sure that our B list guests don't find out that they were your B-list guest, okay? We don't want them to know that they weren't your, quote, first choice of who was going to come to your wedding. We're going to shift from that part of our conversation, and we're kind of going to go into some of your questions that have come in about your guest list. What if someone RSVPs with a +1 even though they were not invited? Literally happens all the time. All the time. Handling it gracefully is really the key. So here's how to approach this situation based on what you have kind of outlined as your guidelines. So first, if you're not allowing any +1s, okay, nobody is getting a +1. Beforehand, we're going to back it up. To be super proactive, you want to clearly state on your invitation that this invite is for one person only. Okay? We have reserved 1 seat with your name on it. Not 2, 1. If you do that and people still RSVP with a +1 anyway, again, it will happen. I don't know what etiquette planet people live on. I don't know if they just don't pay attention to verbiage. I don't know. I don't know. I do this stuff all day, every day, so it's very second nature to me, and it's a head scratcher every single time, but it happens, and it's probably going to happen to you. So if they RSVP with their random person who they met on Tinder that they want to bring as a date, here's what you're going to do. You're going to reach out ASAP, okay? Not in a week, not in a month. You're going to reach out ASAP as soon as you see that uninvited +1 on an RSVP card. This can be a phone call, this can be a text, this can be an email. You know your relationships best. The important thing is we want to get out in front of this immediately. Here's a sample response. We're so excited to celebrate with you. Due to our venue and budgetary constraints, we are unable to accommodate additional guests. We appreciate your understanding, and we can't wait to see you. All right? Any variation on that you like? Okay, another question that came in some various different shapes and forms, but the same general feeling is, how can we cut down our guest list? Okay, this is the obvious problem that so many of us are going to have, is that our lives are fuller of people we love than our budgets are to host. So how to cut down our guest list? Number 1, you're going to set some hard limits and boundaries. And the first step to that, which we talked about at the very beginning of today's show, your venue and your budget. So if your venue holds 100 people, you cannot invite 150 people. You cannot host 150 people. Okay, so 100 is your firm cap. The no kids rule that we touched on earlier. If you're on the fence with a guest list that is getting too big, if you're kind of coming up on that situation, having a no kids or adults only policy can greatly reduce your guest list numbers. People feel very passionately both ways about children at weddings. I'm not going to go into that. I don't know where your family falls on the scale. For some, it's a great solution. For others, it's not even an option. But it's something to consider if you're looking at a guest list that is growing out of control. And then the next way to cut down on your guest list, don't offer plus ones. Don't extend a plus one. If you have a guest who is single and you don't know who their partner is, or you don't want them to bring a random friend or roommate, just don't add plus ones. It's very simple. So we talked about that at length earlier. I think that's enough said. Okay, so hard limits. Hard limits include very clear guidelines. Okay, there are some categories of people who we can set clear guidelines about. Don't feel obligated to invite a certain category of people. Okay, specifically, just because you were invited to their wedding does not mean that you have to invite them to yours. Okay, if someone from college had a 400-person wedding that their parents paid for and you went to it and had a great time, that's awesome. I love that. That does not mean that you need to in turn invite that person to your very intimate 60-person wedding and drive yourself crazy on how to make room for them in your guest list. All right. Don't feel obligated to invite people because they invited you, or they sit next to you at work, or you were best friends in college, but you haven't talked in 10 years. I could go on and on and on. Don't feel that obligation. Okay. Invite the people who are closest to you in your lives right now. Limiting coworkers. This is another big category that a lot of people kind of come up against and have a hard time with. Maybe you just do an all or nothing. Maybe you do an office celebration and you don't invite anyone. That might work for some, it might not work for you. Coworkers are tricky because once you invite one or two, it can really snowball quickly to where you're like, but if I don't invite 20, then it's awkward. So maybe you just need to cut that off and not invite work people at all. And then next category here, distant relatives. You might have a humongous family. You could have 200 people on your list before you even get beyond your family, to say nothing of your friends, your partner's friends and family. Families can be huge. If you haven't spoken to someone in years, if you have no existing relationship with someone, they probably won't be offended or hurt by being left off your guest list. And again, does that go for everyone? Of course it doesn't. But I think in most situations, that's an appropriate way to approach it. And then the last checkpoint here, as you're setting guidelines, if you're concerned about your guest list getting too big, is to work with your families. Work with your parents. Work with anyone who feels like they want to have a say in your guest list, and work with them to compromise, number one, and set fair boundaries. Be really upfront about your boundaries, your limitations, and your reasons why. I'm going to give an example here, and I know this is an oversimplification, but if your parents are paying for everything and you literally have an unlimited budget, then guess what? They can invite whoever the heck they want. However, on the other hand, the much more common situation, if you and your partner are paying for everything or almost everything, then you have also paid for the right to set boundaries and stay firm on your venue and your personal budgetary limitations when it comes to your guest list. Again, I know that's oversimplified. I know that reality is more complex than that. But just some guidelines as you open up this conversation with your families. Keep a spirit of compromise, okay? Keep a spirit of love. Keep a spirit of, I want to work this out with you, because it's really important to all of us that all of our most important people are here. And here are reasons for where we're coming from. We respect where you're coming from, and we're going to meet and compromise on that. And our next point here on managing a guest list that's getting a little bit big and out of control, think about your interactions with your guests. Okay, this is a really simple one. Ask yourself, have I spoken to this person in the last year? Not like, did you text them offhand 6 months ago about some random thing you saw on Facebook, but like, have you actually spoken to them in depth? Do you know what's going on in their lives? Do you want to grab dinner one-on-one with that person if they come to town? Would you be upset if they couldn't come to your wedding? Or would it just be like, didn't think they were going to come anyway, not a big deal? If the answer is no to any of those checkpoints, then they probably don't have to be invited to your wedding if you have a tier 1 and a tier 2 full of people who you really want to have there. And then one final reminder about that 3-tier system. Your tier 1 is must have VIPs of your life. Tier 2, I would love if these people came. And tier 3, it would be nice to have them there, but the world will keep turning if they don't come. And it would be nicer to have tier 2 and tier 1. So cut from tier 3 first and then work upwards as far as you need to get within your target number. Okay, and then last question that we're going to kind of cover as we wrap up for today. What if we have one really big family on one side and then a really small family on the other side? I have heard from some listeners who feel sad, off, weird that their guest list is really lopsided. So either their side or their partner's side has much more people on it. Okay, this is totally normal. We don't create families and relationships based on a cookie cutter list of specs. All right. Families grow really big sometimes. I have an extremely small family. My dad is an only child. My mom has one living sister. I don't have a ton of family who I could invite. My wedding was a while back, as you may know. But if I were to get married today, my side, my family would probably be like 6 people. My husband's side would be like 120. Okay, that's just the way it goes. Totally normal to have one side have way more guests than the other, especially if your partner comes from a big family. Maybe they are an extreme extrovert. Maybe you are an extreme introvert. You hold a tight little pocket of 3 closest friends to you. They have friends dating back from elementary school who they still keep in touch with. Everyone is different. Everyone's family dynamic is different. Everyone's relationships are different. What matters the most is that your guest list reflects the people who the both of you want to celebrate with. All right. So do not worry about numbers. We're not playing dodgeball where we need to have 20 people on each side. If one team has 80 people and one team has 20 people, it's fine. These people are here to celebrate both of you. We're not taking sides. We're not wearing a one color jersey. We're not like Team Matt and Team Louise. Okay? We're all here for the same reason. It's to celebrate the two of you. So I heard from a listener who is feeling really sad about her small list of people because she feels like it's kind of a measurement of her worth and her support and her relationships. And that could not be further from the truth. All right. Everyone's different. It's not a measuring stick of your worth. It's not a measuring stick of how much people care for you. That has nothing to do with it. It just means that your fiance is more of an extrovert. He's more of a socialite. He has a bigger family than you do. That doesn't mean anything beyond that he has a bigger family than you do. All of those people, whether it's 80 on his side, 20 on your side, 100 on her side, 15 on your side, all of those people are showing up to support the two of you as a couple. And regardless of which side of the guest list you fall on, you are about to become an official member of that big, huge family of people who are showing up to support the two of you. So I hope that's helpful. And with that, what a show. I loved putting it together for you. I hope you found it valuable. If you have any additional questions, follow-up questions, feedback, or requests for upcoming shows, please be in touch. You can do that anytime at weddingplanningpodcast.co/contact.